Hello, it's the end of March and I've got a whole bunch of things to talk to you about. So I'm going to do my March wrap up. I'm going to go over the books that I read in March, not like a book review, but just how my reading month went. And then I'm going to go ahead and jump right into my quarterly wrap up. I haven't done one of those before, so it'll be really interesting to see how that goes. But let's start with where we're at, which is the end of March, and let's talk about how the end of the month went. So I'll be putting all sorts of graphics and pictures and this and that up on the screen per usual, but let's start with my reading stats for the month. I read 11 books this month, and it was a pretty good reading month. Not only did I read the most books that I've read in a month so far this year, I also read the highest number of pages in one month this year. Now, this isn't the highest number of books that I've ever read in a month or the highest number of pages, but I do feel like it's a good sign that I'm sort of crawling out of the low ratings that I had the last couple of months. Because did I say this was also the highest star rating that I had? No, I didn't. But this was also my highest star rating. So I had a really good reading month, and yeah, I'm not mad about it. So I will put a graphic up on the screen that shows you all the books that I read this month, including a few I haven't talked about and won't be talking about for a while. So don't look too closely if you like to be surprised. The other thing that I like to look at is where I've been reading books from. So I'll put that chart up, or at least a bigger version of it, as well as a map of the world. And I do have some plans for an upcoming map to use that will show where I have been reading from around the world. But one of the things that I did notice this month and that I was happy to see is that while each month the number of books I read from England or the US tend to still be the highest in numbers, overall for the year, I have read an equal number of books from the US and England as I have read in total from other places in the world. Another fun thing that I have been doing this year is I've been keeping a book bracket, so I will show you what is going on the book bracket. Basically, I'm looking at my 5-star reads from that month, or at least my highest read from each month, and deciding, which book in a face-off would be considered the best. And thus far, I have gone all the way to March, and March's pick is The Power. This was a really good book and turned out to be my first 5-star read of the year, but not my only 5-star read this month, which made me really happy because the year of reading started out good in terms of the amount I was reading, not so great in terms of the average star ratings. The books, I don't know, they were just okay for most of the year so far. I have been keeping track not just of where I'm reading books in the world, but also where I have been reading books in the US, and I did add to that for this month. I read The Power by Naomi Alderman, and that was set in the US as well as around the world, so it was kind of hard to pick a specific location for that book, even though I think a location in South Carolina was the one that came up multiple times. So for that one, I'm not actually going to put it on my US 50 states map that I'm diamond painting. And the other one was Native Son by Richard Wright, and that will fit in the Illinois space, but I'm realizing I haven't actually done that yet at the time of filming. So maybe I'll insert a clip of what the map looks like once I've actually updated it. But it's just basically a wooden board that I'm using extra diamond drills on to fill in when I have read from another state in the US. So obviously Native Son being set in Chicago will count for Illinois. Okay, and then if you've been paying attention, not all the books that I read in the month of March were all the books that I had on my TBR for March. So each month I play a TBR game and then attempt to read all of those books. Sometimes they get DNF'd or whatever, so I will put up a little chart on the screen that shows you all the books that were on my TBR for the month of March and exactly what happened to each of them. There were 3 that I just didn't get to, and then there were also a couple that I DNF'd. And I will say that this chart includes not only the books that came off of my TBR game, but books that I picked that were part of my library challenge and books that were part of book clubs and that kind of thing. I also was pretty successful with my bingo board. I am using a little bingo board that I put together to kind of keep track of my reading plans and what I'm thinking I want to focus on for the month, and here's how my TBR for March fit onto the bingo board. And then there's one other fun thing that I have ended up adding in to my reading, and this will be coming up on a regular basis. I have decided that the way I would like to start approaching short story collections, because I own a few, is to start working on them every Monday. On Mondays, I have reading sprints where I spend the whole day from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time at this point, reading with, anybody who wants to join me. It's just live on my channel, and it's a time where I not only spend some time reading, but I also spend some time getting work done, and I've decided that's the perfect place to pick up a short story, because I'm often spending about 15 minutes of the 60 minutes of silent reading we have doing some other type of work, which means I'm then sitting down and reading for about 45 minutes, and then we have a chatty break. So it's a bit broken up, which is intentional, but I'm thinking that's a way that works really well for me to work through a short story collection, so I'm going to start focusing on those. In the month of March, I started volume 2 of Arabian Nights. This will not show up as a book that I have read until I finish it. Clearly, I have made some good progress in it. I'm pretty happy with that, and I'm really glad that I picked this up. I've been wanting to continue on in this volume of books. There's 3 total, and I was trying to figure out how to do that. I knew from reading volume 1 that you can read it as like a short story collection, and that there is an index at the back that tells you how the stories are related, which gives you a helpful guide as to when you could stop and pick the book back up at a later point. And so I've been using that to help me work through this on Mondays, and that's been going really well, and I'm happy that I finally figured out a way to pick this collection back up and get back to reading and working on it, because I didn't want it to just sit on my shelves forever, because I did really enjoy volume 1, and so far I'm enjoying volume 2. This, however, will get interrupted in the month of April, because I do have a book club pick that is short stories. I'll talk about that when I get to talking about book clubs, but on Mondays I will probably be working through that collection, and maybe interspersing some stories from Arabian Nights as well. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so that's all I have to say about March. So I'm just gonna move ahead and go ahead and talk about my quarter wrap up and what went on with that. So basically, I have been using a bingo board for the year, as I mentioned, and I'll put that up on the screen. I already changed what was originally on my bingo board to the one that I'm using now, and that's fine. And one of the things that I want to do after I go over how like my reading year has gone so far is look at whether or not it would be helpful to update my bingo board. So I'm going to just go and briefly talk about square by square how each of these areas in my reading has been doing, starting with the FOMO square. This is an area where it just reminds me to not get stuck on a structured reading and to feel like I can read whatever I feel like, or not feel like I have to miss out on something just because it's not fitting into my TBR plans or plans in general. And one of the things that I did this year is I did create a 26 and 2026 list, but it basically ended up being a self-sabotage list. It was a list of everything on my shelf that I'm really excited to read that has nothing to do with any of my other reading plans. And so that list ended up being more than 26 books. I did a whole video on it. You can go see that if you want. And yeah, I will put up on the screen a picture of how that's going and what I've read off of that list so far. I've been enjoying myself. I have DNF'd one of the books off of there, and I have read 7 of the books off of that list. We're not going to talk about how long the 26 books list actually is. I'll just say that it's not 26 books. All right, moving on to the next square, which is series. And when I started, I had 4 series that I was working on at the beginning of this year that I had wanted to continue, and I have since updated this. I have, as of today, DNF'd 2 of those series. And again, at some point, I'm going to talk about my DNFs. And when I do, I will talk about the series I've DNF'd as well. I have finished and completed reading one of the series, which is the Regeneration series. That was really good. However, it was a series that I found by the time I reached the end, I was like, I could have skipped book 3 at least, and book 2 was just okay. It was one of those where book 1 would have been enough for me, basically. And I am currently in the middle of reading 4, and that's actually very intentional. I realize that I have other series on my shelves, and so I want to try and keep it to around maybe working on 4 series at a time. So when I got one series off, I intentionally added another series on. Okay, so let's move on to the next square, which is buddy reads, and these are books that I'm reading with somebody else, usually just one other person, though sometimes not. And I have really been enjoying my buddy reads. I have fairly regularly read with 3 different people this year. One of them I buddy read with pretty consistently. We run the book club together that's on my channel, and we are in a side book club now, and then we also have a reading challenge, and then we just buddy read as often as we can, basically. And I have been having a good time with that. I have also been buddy reading with 2 other booktubers, and I really enjoy buddy reads. While they can be a bit more planned and that kind of thing than my other reading, it is always so fun to be able to talk about something you just read or are in the middle of reading with someone else. So I highly recommend it if you have not done that yet. Okay, so buddy reads, let me tell you about what I have that's coming up with those. I have a couple of books to talk about. So one, I am still in the middle of this series, which is the Cairo trilogy. The next book is Sugar Street, and this is a book that I'm working on with a friend as a buddy read, and this is the 3rd book we have coming. I don't know that we'll be starting it in April. We're trying to do like every other month. It may take a little bit longer than that. I'm not too stressed about how that's going to work out, so we'll just see where that goes. On the last Monday in the month of March, so just this past Monday, I guess, I started my next Barnacle Buddy Read, and that is just when I host on my channel a read-along where we spend one day where we all start the same book together. I didn't do any of these in 2025, at least I don't think, and I wanted to bring them back, and so I have, and the book we started together is Tomb of Sand. So thanks for joining me if you were there on Monday and started this book. It's just a really fun time to try a new book, try something that we've all had on our TBR or maybe have been interested, and give it a shot. And it is a long, chunky book, so I think it's a situation that also helps encourage people to start longer books. So if you have Tomb of Sand or you've heard about it and you've been interested in reading it or giving it a try, feel free to go back and watch the recording and start the book with all the rest of us and then continue on at your own pace. Which brings me to another series that I'm still in the middle of that I'm thinking might become a Barnacle Buddy read for some point later in this year, and that would be Life and Fate by Vasily Grossman. This is the 2nd book in the Stalingrad duology, or dilogy, as Vasily Grossman himself called it, and I'm really looking forward to getting to book 2, which I've heard is even better than book 1. And when I posted about Stalingrad during the month of March for March of the Mammoths, I had so many people comment about how they either love this book or they are pretty sure they're going to love this book and they can't wait to read it. Neither can I, so I'm thinking some point later this year I'm going to pick this book up and might do another Barnacle Buddy read with this one. So another chunky book. If you have it and you're looking forward to reading it, keep an eye out for that. It'll probably happen sometime in summer. So that also gives you time, if you haven't read Stalingrad but you've wanted to read it, to go ahead and get that done and be ready for this bad boy. I have been doing a high school required rereading challenge with my friend Alex, and I mentioned her earlier, but not by name, as one of my buddy readers, and I mentioned this challenge earlier, and I have a whole sort of playlist that you can watch about that and that kind of thing. And here's an update on our report card. It's looking pretty rough. We've been giving each of the books that we have been rereading from high school a grade. And some of them have fared better than others, let's just put it that way. So we have 2 books left, and we are going to be continuing on with those probably in the beginning of April is when we're going to have our next live show, because the way that we handle it, and I'm shuffling books around down here, but the way that we handle it is that we, Alex and I, will read a book and then we'll host a live show where we talk about and share our thoughts about that book, specifically in light of it having been on high school curriculums and that kind of thing. So it's not a book review, it's more just a rereading reaction, and it's been really fun. And the next book that we have coming up, that's what I was going to tell you, is the Canterbury Tales. Yeah, huge, thick, and intimidating, and we have no idea how this is going to go. However, what you should know about this, if you're thinking about reading along, is we do not plan to read the entire Canterbury Tales. I will put out more information about this probably in a community post and share with you exactly what stories we are reading out of here, but it is not all of them. That would be too much, and we still have one more book to go after this, and we will be rebooting. So I have had numerous people ask me if we plan on doing a round 2 of the high school required rereading challenge, and we do. We haven't decided exactly what we want it to look like yet, but there will be a whole announcement and that kind of thing. And I think we're thinking of making it like an official read-along, readathon, reading challenge event type of deal. So that should be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, if you would like to read the Canterbury Tales, like I said, I'll be putting out a community post soon that lists all the stories in here that we plan on reading. So that way you can also read the same ones. So of course you're always welcome to read all of them. And then you can keep an eye out for the live show when that comes. So that is how that challenge is going, which honestly I would say is going pretty well, but in some ways it's been fun to do. Whether or not we're being harsh on the books, yeah, kind of. All right, for book clubs, I have a lot of book clubs going on. When I started the year, I just had one book club with my channel members. We've read 2 books from there so far. It's been really good. And the next book that we are going to be reading for the month of April and May is going to be Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. We read Native Son in the month of February and March, and that was really good. And this just seemed like the next logical book pick for a lot of us. And also, this was recommended me as a book to read very closely to Native Son. So I know nothing about this book basically, but I've wanted to try Dostoevsky for a while. This will be my first book by him. Well, I guess that's not really true. I have read Notes from the Underground, but that was way back in middle school. I read that on my own. I have no recollection of it other than thinking it was odd. So I'll be interested to see, as an adult, going back into his writing, how my opinion of him is, if I like him as much as Tolstoy, if I personally think Crime and Punishment really is similar to Native Son, and if so, how. So I've got that coming up. I am also in 2 other book clubs. One is an in-person local book club, and I mentioned earlier that there was a different short story collection I was going to be working my way through on Mondays, and that is going to be Embroidered Worlds. This is fantastic fiction from Ukraine and the diaspora. And yeah, I am really looking forward to this. I mean, just look at this cover. Absolutely amazing. And yeah, it's a science fiction fantasy book club, so that is what I am expecting to get out of this. There are a lot of short stories in here, so I'm probably going to have to be very mindful on Mondays of making sure I get through a certain number of them each Monday so that I am done in time for book club, because I realistically only have 3 weeks to finish this whole book, but I think I can do that. My third book club is with a few close friends that I am doing, and at the time of recording this, I don't actually know what our next pick is going to be because we haven't met yet. And during our meeting, we will pick our next book. So I'm looking forward to finding out what that is, but since I am going to be editing this probably after we've met, I will put up on the screen what our next book is, if I know. I have on here a 2022 self-destruct list, and this is basically where I've just been going back each month and revisiting books that I said in 2022 that I want to read and I have since purchased. And I think I'm going to change what I'm calling that because I've been calling it a book haul revisit, but I know up to a certain point that these aren't really books that I hauled, I don't think, and don't really know because I wasn't keeping my data very clear at that point. Anyway, for books that I have been wanting to read since 2022, I have, as of today, read all the books in January and February, so I am caught up till then. What I am doing is, if there are books from a month that I still haven't read yet, like in the month of March, then those books are going to be going into my unicorn jar, which is a type of TBR jar that I use during my monthly TBR game. And that's pretty much all I have to say on that. Other than that, like for each of these squares, there's usually some sort of video that you can watch to learn more about it if you want. Okay, and then I have a space for projects. How have my projects been going? Have I been making progress on my reading projects? Yeah, kind of, sort of. I don't know, because I really haven't been paying that much attention to that. I do think about it sometimes, but not frequently, so I don't think that's actually a helpful category for me. So there's that, and I'm just realizing I skipped two other areas, so let me go back to those. Okay, bookshelf declutter. I have finally done like a full bookshelf declutter where I took off my shelves books that I'm not interested in reading. I uploaded all of those to Pango and that kind of thing, and I'm currently actively ignoring all of those books. So I think I was right that if they were out of sight, I really wouldn't mind if they got sold and I just didn't get a chance to read them. I will say, in all fairness, most of the books that I've sold on Pango so far from that list are books that I read. So there's that. I think there was one that I hadn't read yet. I didn't feel bad about it. So that's how that's going. And then I also have Past TBR, and Past TBR is a selection of books that, as it sounds, I put on past TBRs and then just didn't end up reading. And I have decided with those that like my TBR vets, each month I'm going to put those into my unicorn jar and they will be potentially picked during my monthly TBR game. And so right now I have put January through March books as well as all my priority past TBR books into the unicorn. Those are all the books that were like repeat offenders basically to being on TBRs and not read. So you won't see any of those picks in my April TBR because I hadn't fully updated the TBR jar then. I don't think. Maybe I did. I film out of order, so sometimes it's confusing. But either way, they will be in there, particularly by the time May rolls around. Okay, and then here's where I should have talked about the projects, and there's still nothing going on with them that I can think of, and that space probably needs to change, which brings me to my bingo board update. I have decided that there are a few areas on my bingo board that I want to update to more accurately reflect what I'm actually doing in these areas. So one of the areas is the 2022 self-destruct. I already talked about how those are really just my TBR vets and books that are on my list of to be read for 2022. And so that's just what I'm going to change this space to be. It's just going to be 2022 TBR vets. And so I will be looking at how well am I actually knocking books off of that 2022 TBR. The other area is the declutter area. Nothing's really happening with that. I don't think anything's really going to happen with that, and I really don't want to pay any more attention to that or be reminded of it. Like, it's hidden under my coffee table. They will sell as they go. Pango sends me reminders, and that's all I want to think about it. So I'm going to switch this square to say repeats and favorites. So I do like reading books by repeat authors or reading books that are in genres or on topics that I've enjoyed. So I kind of want to like remind myself to do that pretty frequently, as well as go back to things that are my favorites. So favorite authors, favorite genres, favorite time periods, all of those kind of things. So yeah, that's what that space is going to be. And then the final space that I want to change is the project space, because like I think that was just too vague, and I don't think of my projects in that way. And I'm going to change that to 2026 purchases, because I did finally do a book haul, I think, in March. No, maybe that's coming up. Whatever. There's going to be a book haul. I have been hauling books in 2026, and unlike my 2022 TBR list, which has gotten pretty long and still has some on there that's not read, I want to do better about reading books as I'm bringing them into my home, so I want a spot that reminds me to do that. So there's my new bingo board. That's how my year has gone so far. Let me know how your reading month went, how your reading year is going, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!